Good afternoon and welcome to our COVID-19 weekly update for the town of Plymouth. I'm Steve Triffletti, your Plymouth Town Moderator, and we're here each week at noon for this update. This forum is being brought to you live by PAC TV on Comcast channels 13 and 15 and Verizon channels 43 and 47. You can also watch this on PAC TV's streaming channel by going to pactv.org/live. For questions during today's forum, please email plymouthinfo@pactv.org. These forums can be replayed at pactv.org/Plymouth. Today's participants on presentation number 79 include Kenneth Tavares and Matt Muratore, and we're joined by Heather Cosby, Mark Wilson, Bill McCoy, Chris Campbell, Michael Jackman, and Sarah Cloud. And each week we begin with Kenneth Tavares. He is the chair of the Plymouth Select Board. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you, Steve, and good afternoon to everyone. I notice a couple of the panelists, especially you, Steve, have Christmas colors on. I want you to know I think I have pilgrim colors on today with my 1620 shirt that you can buy locally in Village Landing. What I want to talk about is couple of things about our own history, and that is that this is a very important week in Plymouth. If you're a member of the Pilgrim Society, you celebrated the landing of the Pilgrims yesterday. If you're a member of the Old Colony Club, you celebrated this morning at about 6:15 with a cannon being shot off. As many times as I know that's going to happen, I still jump and look at my wife and say, what was that? But we can now officially say that we are 400 years old. And I think that that's a major achievement. You know, we all descend from good stock. I think that our ancestors that have immigrated to this country and to Plymouth in particular gave us some very strong steps to walk in. And I know that because of that, we can and will defeat this absolutely horrible virus. But I want to share with you what I think is a poem of hope and faith and peace. This weekend I had to move some books to make a repair in our family room, and one of the books just kind of slid out and opened up. And not that I always believe in things happening by chance. This time I do, because it was a book of sermons by the late Reverend Peter Gomes. It's called A Word to the Wise. I guess we're all sponsoring books today. But this particular book had sermons from the year 2007. And I was looking for something inspirational for being so close to Christmas. And I went to one of Peter's one of his sermons, and found that he used at the beginning and the end of the sermon a poem that talks about a New Year's plan. And since we won't be on until after New Year's, I want to share this with you because I think there's so much good that's going on now and hope that we can all start to feel better. The name of the poem is A New Year's Plan by Ida Scott Taylor. And it starts off this way: one day at a time, this is enough. Do not look back and grieve over the past, for it is gone. And do not be troubled about the future, for it has not yet come. Live in the present and make it so beautiful that it'll be worth remembering. I think those are great words as we all enter into the holiday season and begin to see changes taking place around us. I wanted to share that with you, and thought if it was good enough for Peter 13 years ago, it was good enough for me to reflect on those words myself. I hope you enjoy them as much as I have. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's Kenneth Tavares, chair of the Plymouth Select Board. And I don't have a book as he does. I do have, however, a list that I've been making and checking it twice, and it's a list of all the participants for the past year. We have over 90 of them, and at our next show, which will be at the start of 2020, we'll scroll all the credits for all the people who participated. But today we have many of our regular participants returning. We're going to begin with our health segment with Dr. Mark Wilson. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks very much, Steve. I thought I'd do things a little bit differently this time. And basically, I think everyone who is tuned in today is aware of the good news that 2 vaccines against COVID are becoming available, and also the uncertain news about a virus variant that may be more easily transmitted. And this and other information is almost inescapable in the standard TV and other media outlets. So I thought that viewers might appreciate hearing about other information regarding COVID epidemiology that hasn't been as widely discussed. So as of now, about 18 million people have been infected in the US out of roughly 332 million US residents. That represents about 5% of our population. However, a recent report from the University of Washington Institute for Health Metrics estimates that actually about 17% of the US population has been infected. The reason for this difference is because there are many asymptomatic infections that are not included in the official count. So this means that in fact, roughly 55 million people probably have been infected. So that may sound scary, but I actually believe it should be seen as good news. These 55 million people in the US should now mostly be immune to reinfection, at least for a while. And thanks to that immunity, these people almost certainly cannot transmit infection to others. So that reduces the risk for the rest of us. But now, with widespread vaccination on the horizon, there's discussion of whether these people who were previously infected should still receive the vaccine. Also, many of us don't know if we've been infected, yet we still want to be vaccinated. So it raises the question of whether there is a risk of being vaccinated if you have been previously infected. And the good news, again, is evidence so far suggests that there's really no reason at all to avoid getting vaccinated if you know or suspect that you have already been infected. The vaccine poses little to no risk to most people and will not create a problem for those of us with past infection, nor worsen an existing infection. Vaccinating people who already have some natural antibodies represents no extra risk and actually may enhance the cellular part of COVID immunity that we get from these past infections. So obviously, though, if you're experiencing COVID symptoms at the time you were scheduled for vaccination, you should not go to the clinic because you may risk infecting others by being there. But getting the vaccine cannot aggravate or reactivate infection. For anyone who might have been exposed to the virus just before going for vaccination, the CDC now recommends quarantining for 7 days after a negative test or for 10 days without a test. However, it is generally not necessary to be tested for either the virus or for antibodies in order to receive the vaccine. So this is all good news. And I think most of us are going to be presenting good news today. On a related note, remember that even after being vaccinated, everyone must still continue to wear a mask and practice safe distancing, probably for months to come. This is because it's not yet really known whether people who are vaccinated can still be carriers. No vaccine offers perfect 100% protection. The 2 vaccines that are currently authorized protected about 95% of the clinical trial participants from infection and from most symptoms. However, just how effective either vaccine will be in the real world once vaccination is widespread won't be known for some time. Also, we don't yet know how long protection lasts following vaccination. So the expectation, of course, is that it will be for months at least, maybe for years, but we still don't know. Data are needed after vaccinating thousands and thousands of people to see whether protection eventually wanes. The Pfizer and Moderna trials that we're all familiar with did not fully evaluate whether vaccinating also prevents infections in addition to preventing the symptoms. And so this is really very important because people who have been vaccinated could still become infected even if they don't become ill once infected, and therefore might be able to transmit to others. A quote here from Dr. Fauci, who spoke to the Washington Post recently, is it is conceivable that the vaccine would protect you against clinical disease, but not necessarily protect you against infection. So until we know more, those of us who are vaccinated should act as though we could still be infectious and wear our face masks when around others. On another note, many of the listeners may be planning holiday parties, and the CDC just came out with some advice on how to make winter celebrations safer. First, the safest choice is to celebrate virtually or with the people you live with. If you do gather with others who are not part of your household, you can make the celebration safer by doing the following. First, most importantly, limit the number of guests. If weather permits, try and have an outdoor celebration with family and friends. If you are able to have extra unused masks available for your guests, encourage them to wear them if they don't have one. Practice simple hygiene, clean and disinfect frequently touched surfaces. You can also use single-use options like condiment packets and disposable containers, plates, or utensils. If you have a touchless garbage can, use that. And most importantly, you should cancel your gathering if you or someone who lives with you is sick or has been near someone who thinks they had COVID-19. Also, the CDC suggests that you consider alternative winter holiday activities. You could schedule a time to virtually eat a meal with others. You could throw a virtual dance party. You could plan to meet virtually for opening gifts together. You could use Zoom or Skype to decorate cookies or make holiday crafts and decorations. We all want to enjoy the holiday period as much as possible, but we have to realize that this is really an exceptional year that requires major changes in our usual behaviors. It will be different next year. Finally, if you are baking holiday cookies, breads, or cakes for friends or for neighbors or for family members, there's more good news. The CDC reported recently that there is currently no evidence that people can get COVID-19 by eating or handling prepared food in a proper manner. In general, when you're preparing baked goods or any food item for that matter, just follow the regular steps that you would normally use to prevent any foodborne illness. I found a series of 4 different activities interesting provided by the Partnership for Food Safety and Education, where they recommend the 4 following activities for preparing food: clean, separate, cook, and chill. And this is sort of standard what most of us would practice in any event. But in general, baked goods present really no additional worries for COVID transmission to friends and family. So you might consider turning your neighborhood cookie swap into a virtual experience and perhaps enjoy them together over Zoom. Let me stop there, and I'd be happy to answer any additional questions anyone might have later on.
Thank you. That's Dr. Mark Wilson. He is Professor Emeritus, an active professor at the University of Michigan School of Public Health, Department of Epidemiology. And at this time, we're going to continue our health segment with Sarah Cloud, and she is Director of Behavioral Health at Beth Israel Deaconess here in Plymouth. Welcome, Sarah.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a little while since I've joined this group, and I find the update about the vaccinations very, very promising and exciting. And Dr. Wilson, I think, did a really great job covering a lot of what I was hoping to touch base with you about. So I'll keep it simple and maybe just expand upon what he said. This is hopefully one of the last final hurdles we're going to have as we're getting through towards the vaccination and moving forward, and hopefully putting a lot of this past year, which has been so difficult in 2020, behind us. And I know people are really tired, but the holidays and the surge from the Thanksgiving holidays, which is very rare, very real. I know you see it on TV. We're certainly experiencing it here in the hospital, but hopefully this will be some of the last major hurdles that we'll encounter together. So a couple of suggestions to get us across the finish line this holiday season. A lot of the same kind of suggestions that Dr. Wilson had. But I really want to encourage folks to blend the cherished traditional holiday activities that you have with by adding new ones as well. And also to try to engage your family, especially young children, um, in the planning of for the holidays when possible and when age appropriate. So, for example, what I mean is that some of the cherished holiday traditions that are COVID friendly might include baking the cookies that we know now are safe to share, or watching a seasonal movie. So, those are things that we've loved to do. We've done them every year. And those are good things that we can engage in that's going to keep us all safe. But try adding some new holiday traditions that are COVID friendly. And so that could be cooking together with family via Zoom or FaceTime. For example, recently I did such that I have a cousin in Vermont who really likes to try new recipes. So I had, as an early Christmas gift, I mailed him one of those hand crank pasta makers. And we made fettuccine Alfredo from scratch together on Zoom. It was a little messy, flour was all over the kitchen, but it was a lot of fun. So it was really delicious. It was memorable, and maybe it will become a new tradition. So kind of blending those and making new memories together would be really great. The other thing I really want to touch upon is that the holidays can feel lonely for many people. That feeling is only going to be amplified this year. So please take a moment to reach out, and that can be by calling, texting, writing, a video chat, or even leaving a small gift on the front steps to let people, your loved ones, your neighbors, know that they're being thought of. Not only will it make them feel remembered and important this holiday season, but helping others actually makes us feel better too. So it's really just a win-win. So thank you for the opportunity to come on, and wishing everybody a happy holiday and a very safe season.
Thank you. And that's Sarah Cloud. She's Director of Behavioral Health at Beth Israel Deaconess in Plymouth. She and the other members of the panel are here to answer your questions. Send them to plymouthinfo@pactv.org. We're now moving to our education portion of our presentation. We welcome back Dr. Christopher Campbell. He is the Superintendent for Plymouth Public Schools. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Steve. I have a very brief update since last reporting to you last Wednesday. So first, a COVID update. As of last Friday, when we report all of our confirmed cases, the number of students that tested positive due to exposure outside of school was 16. Last week, we had 127 students under quarantine. Regarding our staff, we had 8 staff members that were tested positive due to exposure outside of school, and 29 that were under quarantine. So the total COVID cases to date as of last Friday again are 69 students and 28 staff. And we've averaged 63 students under quarantine every week and about 11 staff. And again, this is an average that goes back to when we started keeping this data the week of ending September 25th. So to put it all in perspective, to date, less than 1% of our students have confirmed COVID cases since we've opened school, and 2% of our staff. We've also experienced many new cases in the past 2 weeks, which isn't surprising to many people. We've talked about this on this show. However, it's important to stress that what we continue to see is largely household transmission, so family members passing the virus along to other household members. And all this information can be found on our website. We update it every Friday by 3 p.m. Tomorrow we'll update it for this short abbreviated week. And it can be found on the COVID-19 case update. And we have an icon right on our website for this information. So new information. Yesterday, the Department of Education announced its updated protocols for responding to COVID scenarios in schools with recent guidance updates from the CDC. So this new guidance provides 3 new possible quarantine scenarios for our district. So first, close contact individuals who have tested positive for COVID-19 must quarantine for at least 7 days, as was already said, provided that they are tested on day 5 or later from their last exposure to the positive individual and receive a negative test. And they must also not experience any symptoms up to that point. If they have a negative test and continue to experience no symptoms, they may return after day 7. In addition, these individuals have to continue to actively monitor for symptoms through day 14, self-isolate if new symptoms develop. So that's new for us. An individual may also need to quarantine for at least 10 days, provided that they have not experienced any symptoms up to this point, conduct active monitoring for symptoms through day 14, and self-isolate if new symptoms develop. No test is necessary under that option for the purpose of existing quarantine or exiting it too. The last scenario requires an individual to quarantine for at least 14 days, which has been our practice all along, after the last exposure to the person who tested positive. If they've experienced any symptoms during the quarantine period, even if they have a negative COVID test, they are unable to conduct active monitoring of symptoms for some reason. They were quarantined for 14 days. So, and finally, as I've said before, our students and staff have done a remarkable job, they really have, in practicing primary prevention strategies in our schools. And it's critically important that we continue to practice these important prevention strategies outside of school. So as we enter the holiday break tomorrow afternoon, I just want to thank our community for its shared commitment to doing the best for our students. Our public health officials have been fantastic to work with. And again, encouraging to continue to do frequent hand washing, wearing masks, maintaining physical distance, avoiding gatherings and travel as much as possible. We all need to stay home and not go to school if we feel sick. As we do this and do our best to adhere to all these safety precautions through the winter, I'm really confident that we'll see a better 2021 for our communities and our schools. So I just want to wish everyone a happy holiday, and thank you, Steve, for having me on again.
Thank you, and that's Dr. Christopher Campbell. He is the superintendent for Plymouth Public Schools, and we're now going to move to our next segment, and we welcome back Heather Cosby. She's a CPA for the town of Plymouth. And Heather, I know in your world there's a lot going on now with this new legislation. So I know it's over 5,000 pages, not enough time to read it all, but what are the highlights?
Hi, Steve. Yes, I feel like Christmas has come early. I am excited. And yeah, it's incredible. So I do have an outline. This law I think it's still to be signed by the president, but there's going to be no issue with it getting signed, is really, really good. It's probably the best law I've seen this year. And when I say that, it really clarifies and fixes a lot of the problems I've been talking about or bringing to attention all this summer. It provides obviously some additional relief to individuals as well as businesses, and there's a lot of components to it, but it really is a good bill for business. So let me I need to put up something in front of me. So in the big picture, one of the things I've been talking about all year was the problem with if you had a PPP loan, yes, it's going to be forgiven. It's not taxable income, but the IRS has been stating all year, you can't deduct the expenses. So Congress came together and they told IRS, no, all the expenses are going to be deducted. This is a huge victory for businesses that we're about to get a really big tax surprise if this law didn't get fixed. So that's one of the big items, is that the expenses are deducted. When it comes to individuals, so number one, there's a second round of stimulus payment, an economic payment to taxpayers. It's $600 per person, and it is also $600 per child, dependent on your return. There is the income phase outs that are similar as before. So if you're an individual, you make under $75,000, you'll get $600. You're a married couple under 150, $1,200. Married couple, 2 kids under 150, $2,400. I have heard the Treasury Secretary say they could start rolling out payments electronically as early as next week. So expect, because they had this all in place, they have everybody's banking information from the first round. I expect this to get rolled out pretty quick, and it'll probably just show up randomly in your bank account if you had your first payment direct deposited. The other piece for individuals that's really wonderful is that they've expanded the unemployment. So by that, the unemployment was going to expire at the end of the year. It's been expanded through March. It's a $300 a week payment that will go through March 14th as of right now. It also extends the program to include the self-employed or gig workers that wouldn't normally qualify for traditional unemployment with the state. It also expands the state unemployment, supplements the state's unemployment with additional time. So that's great for the individuals. When it comes to the PPP loans, So you're going to start hearing things called PPP1 and PPP2. So the new law allows businesses to get another round of PPP funds. So, and that's whether or not you got one the first time. So obviously, if you never got one, you can still go and obtain one. If you already got a PPP loan, you're going to be able to get a second one, but they're going to want you to provide proof that during a quarter this year, you experienced a 25% decline in revenue. So like with everything else that's happened, there will be regulations and instructions coming out from SBA and how this is going to happen. But just know that if you had a quarter this year where your revenue declined by 25%, then you're going to be able to be more than likely eligible for a second round of PPP funds. That will also be completely forgiven. The other really big, nice thing that has happened in this law is that there's been a lot of talk about, make this easy, the debt forgiveness process easy for small businesses. And what it has done is it has provided, it's told SBA to make a simplified process for businesses that have loans of under 150,000. So quite honestly, that's going to be almost every small business that got, a loan in Plymouth. And what this is going to do is it says first of all, the forgiveness application has to be one page. Everybody is going to attest to the information. Obviously, you could be audited later as a business. You need your records to support it, but they're not going to make you go through the onerous process of necessarily proving every item. You're going to be able to provide estimated information. So that will make this process really simple. I've been advising my clients this whole time, don't do the forgiveness application because this is what we were told might be coming. The problem is that if you've already done your forgiveness application, they're going to have to come out with transition rules because you've already submitted all this information. Maybe you don't want SBA to have all that information on you for your forgiveness application. So there's going to be a transition for people who've obtained their forgiveness and versus people who've just been waiting and they'll be able to do it under the new program. But this is fabulous. Obviously, all the banks are going to have to update their entire forgiveness application process. SBA has, I think, 24 days to come up with this. Once this is signed into law, they have 24 days to come up with the new process. So at the end of the day, if you're a business and you're waiting to do loan forgiveness, just sit back and wait maybe a month or two before you even start the process, because you're going to want to use the simplified method and it's going to take time to roll out and get all the programs ready for you and the banks to roll out their process to you. So just sit tight, know it, you got good news coming. It's going to be simpler. Some of the other items in the bill, there's a really, really neat item that's not been talked about. The business. So if you're a business and you take clients out to eat or you take your staff out to eat, that's a meals expense. And normally you can only deduct half of it. For the years 2021 and 2022, if you have a meals expense, you're going to get 100% deduction. So what this was intended to do was to support restaurants. If you have a meals expense at a restaurant, you're going to be able to deduct 100% of it because they're trying to stimulate that industry and get businesses flowing, doing business to business work. So that was an exciting part of it. I think there's a lot of pieces of it, but those big, should hopefully be more of these points and more. The only other thing I want to say is that there are items at the 2020 so I want to 20 software with the end tax preparers is going to be delayed. This may actually, there's already definitely being extended because the software is not ready for returns to be done. It's not going to be really, but just expect to have delays in filing your taxes this year because of these last minute changes, which again are all positive and good, but it's just going to cause a little more delays, and the IRS is still not at full capacity. So that's an update from this world. I think it's wonderful news. And Merry Christmas to everybody. So good to see you. So thanks.
Thank you. That's Heather Cosby. She's a Plymouth CPA. There were a couple of words that didn't come through due to bandwidth issues. However, good information about the changes in the law. And to further support what she has to say, we're going to be going to Michael Jackman. And he is director of Massachusetts Congressman William Keating's office. He's the district director. And Michael, was the congressman in support of this legislation?
Oh, absolutely, Steve. And thank you as always for the opportunity to come on and talk and finally have something to talk about. I feel like I've been coming on this show for the last 2 or 3 months and not have any good news. And, Heather says it feels like Christmas came early. I guess maybe I should be wearing my Santa Claus hat, but on behalf of Congress, I think we're just happy that we finally broke through the logjam. There were obviously some disagreements. We all read about them in the news about what should have been included, what should not have been included. But I think cooler heads prevailed. The realization was that people needed relief. People needed that extra unemployment assistance. People needed that extra direct aid to get through these winter months. We see the rates are climbing everywhere. The unemployment rates are remaining steady, if not increasing. And the realization was just that there had to be something done, and they did it. And, as Rep. Muratore can attest, sometimes when you're facing a big holiday and a big end of year deadline, legislation all of a sudden becomes more of a priority and gets done, and compromises are made. And that's what happened here. And it's not a perfect bill. It's got a lot in it that's good. One thing that Congress was really excited about, of course, this was a stimulus bill, but it was also attached to an end of year funding bill, which might not make sense to some people, but the result of it was that also included was the Water Resources Development Act of 2020, which includes expedited funding for the replacement of the canal bridges, which is really important in our district. It's going to be really important for tourism, for all of southeastern Massachusetts going forward. So we're really excited about that too. A few other items I would want to mention that to supplement what Heather talked about. There's increased funding for rental assistance and for nutrition assistance in this COVID relief bill too. So many people are suffering food insecurity, housing insecurity, because they've lost their jobs, because they don't have access to the benefits that they might have had either through work or through other programs. So it's so important that those programs are supported, and there's a lot more funding being added to those programs as well. I think it's also important to note that Congress passes this bill, the president hopefully will sign it today, and it'll be implemented. Like Heather said, people might be seeing that $600 or multiples of 600 in their bank account soon. People have been asking us, will some of those come out as debit cards again? My suspicion will be that they will. We haven't heard definitely from the Treasury. I'm sure we'll hear something next week once they've sorted it all out. But back in the spring, they took it upon themselves to issue some of those payments through debit cards because the rationale was that they could get them out quicker. Some folks did have issues with that, and we had a lot of casework with that. And there were folks who didn't get the $1,200 credit for various reasons. Maybe their income was artificially inflated for 2018 or 19. So those folks will need to file for a recovery rebate credit. As Heather alluded to at the end there, with all these changes to tax issues and tax codes and tax legislation coming right at the end of the year, it might take a while for that tax software and those tax forms to be ready. But folks should look forward to that $1,200 recovery rebate credit if they did not receive the stimulus payment in calendar year 2020. So those are some of the issues we'll be looking at going forward. The devil, as always, is in the details. And when we hear more from the agencies on how they're going to roll out these benefits, we'll be happy to share them with you. And our office is always available to take questions. If folks have questions, again, our number is 508-746-9000. And we look forward to getting these benefits in people's hands going forward as we turn the page on 2020 and into 2021. And I want to wish everyone, obviously, a very happy holiday and a happy new year as well. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Michael Jackman. He is District Director, Congressman William Keating's office. At this time, we welcome back Reverend William McCoy. Reverend McCoy is local clergy representative for the town of Plymouth. And Bill, what do you have for us today during this holiday season? You need to unmute yourself, Bill. And welcome back.
Thank you.
go.
Sorry about that. I keep thinking about something I heard Prime Minister of Great Britain, Boris Yeltsin, say, which was that because of the crisis in Great Britain, which is extremely severe now, Christmas has to be canceled. And I understand, of course, what he means by that is that gatherings need to be canceled or certainly curtailed, and the need to remain in place and the social distance is all the more important. And like our friends in Great Britain, we too need to protect ourselves and others. But we also need to remember that for people of faith, and at the heart of Christmas is the glad truth that we're not alone, that the burdens we suffer are shared and made lighter as we share them, and there's no canceling of that. We need to remember that there's no canceling of the hope and healing and the promise and the peace of Christmas. And of course, while things are very different this year, there's nothing different about the truth. People of faith have celebrated every Christmas. Our celebrations are certainly different in 2020, but that doesn't change what really matters, what lies at the heart of Christmas. And the belief that Christmas is for children is only true if people of faith recognize that all of us are children, in the sense that all of us are in need of hope and healing in one form or another. We're all of us in need of the peace promised at Christmas in the birth narratives of the New Testament. There's no canceling what meets the need for peace. And of course, for people of faith, this is no ordinary peace, which is hard enough to come by. It's not a peace which is the absence of conflict so much as the presence of justice and of love, and no ordinary love at that. People of faith believe the love of God, those narratives in the Gospels proclaim, is a truth that no darkness, no disease, no violence or distress of any kind can cancel or defeat. The tradition in my church, the Church of the Pilgrimage, and in churches around the world, is to lift candles on Christmas Eve and to share the declaration from John's Gospel: the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Now, that said, and I think I'm echoing what Sarah said earlier, holidays can be some of the most dark and difficult times of our lives. Well, they can be for those of us who experience the death of someone we've loved, whether it be to coronavirus or any other cause of death. I'm a grief counselor, and I certainly know of this among many people I meet with. And also the ways we manage the holidays are as individual and unique as we are. So what's important is not to be so hard on ourselves, saying things to ourselves like, I shouldn't be feeling sad. After all, it's supposed to be a happy and festive time. Things like that. We need to guard against those things. It's important to remember that there's no right or wrong way to manage, much less celebrate the holidays if you're grieving or subject to depression. And many are at this time of year. You really have to decide what's right for you. And you can change your mind about that as often as you might need to. And if you become something of an enigma to your relatives or friends, so be it. If they truly care about you, they'll adjust. Holidays won't be the same after a loved one's death, but that doesn't have to keep us from finding meaning again. Maybe finding, again, as Sarah said, new traditions or ways to celebrate what matters most. Light a candle for your loved one. Light one for yourself. Light one for people the world over, people who walk in darkness, as the prophet Isaiah puts it, every day of their lives. Share a favorite story of your loved one or of a time you celebrated Christmas in style. Worship online with people of faith. There are several opportunities for this. Listen to the beautiful music of this season. Say a prayer for peace, yours and the world's. Call somebody you know who's hurting. Better still, give them something to eat. It's amazing how mutually beneficial generosity and giving can be. By all means, exercise caution this year. We, as Ken has said, won't be stuck in this situation forever, but don't cancel Christmas, not in the sense of allowing the darkness or grief or distress or the disease to have the final say. Keep Christmas as Scrooge did once he was transformed. Keep whatever holiday traditions you may keep to shine a light and keep the darkness at bay. Again, thank you for having me on here, Steve, and blessings to you and your families, everyone here, now in the days ahead and on into the new year.
Thank you. And that's Reverend William McCoy, clergy in the town of Plymouth. And again, thanking him for his comforting words during this holiday season. He and all the members of the panel can take your questions. Send them to plymouthinfo@pactv.org. And now, each week, as we circle around our panel, we finish with a report from the state, our Plymouth State Representative, Matthew Muratore. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, Steve, how you doing today? Love the sweater today. It looks great. And I'm wondering too, Ken's actually wondering, are we going to be listed 80 times when you list all the credits?
No,
okay.
you're part of the list of over 90 people.
Okay, then we should be listed as many times as we've been on the show. Anyways, first of all, I want to thank everyone for their inspirational messages today, particularly Heather and Mike Jackman and Congressman Keating. I think this is great news for the business community. Obviously, it's great information from Mark and the Reverend as well, and Sarah. But I'm particularly glad also for Chris Campbell and the schools and making that decision for the changing of the days to come back to school. My kids have been, last time they were in school was November 20th. At no fault of their own, it's just the way the regulations went. And I got tested positive, Chris got tested positive, and the 14 days just kept rolling. But I'm glad to say that my daughter's on the basketball team, the high school. She goes back today. She's very thrilled to do that. And they're back to school tomorrow. Even if it's only a half a day, we gave them the choice not to go, and they all want to go. So we're glad to hear that as well. So the update we have, Steve, with the state, as you know, it's still climbing. We have almost 2,000 people in the hospital at this point, but to put this in perspective, back on the height of this in April, we had almost 4,000 people in the hospital. So we're at 1,991 people in the hospital, with 410 of those in the ICU, and almost half of those, 215, are on ventilators. The capacity of beds still remain pretty good in Massachusetts. We have almost 20% of our beds are available and open in Massachusetts. 28% of the ICU beds are open in Massachusetts. And in our area, the Southeast region area, we have 22% of our beds are open, and 38% of our ICU beds are open. So we're faring a little bit better on the open beds here in the southern part of Massachusetts. The number of active cases are 84,368, with a 7-day positivity rate of 5.94%. So we're approaching the 6% mark. But again, putting that in perspective, going back to April, May, we were up in the mid to upper 20% range at that point. We've had well over 10 million tests, 10,240,000 tests have been conducted since March. The confirmed cases are at 314,850, with the average age of being 65. The deaths have over 11,500 now, with 7,151 of those being in long-term care facilities. And I'm happy to announce that the long-term care residents will be receiving their vaccines starting on Monday. So we hope to get all those vaccines in place for the close to 40,000 residents in long-term care facilities to start on Monday and hopefully finish by the early part of January. And you're looking at the age group again. I always like looking at the ages to see, how many, what's the age group of getting infected. The ages between 0 and 29 is almost up to 24,000. Looking at a 2-week period from right after Thanksgiving, November 29th to December 16th. Ages 30 to 49 were 19,000. Ages 50 to 69 were 15,500, and 70 plus are 5,131. So you can see it's really people under the age of 40 within that age group that are really still getting infected with this. More than half, though, are asymptomatic, which is good news, but unfortunately it does affect elderly people. So if you come in contact with them, and in our family, and unfortunately my mother-in-law is in the hospital now. She has COVID. She has stage 4 cancer that she's been living with since 2004. So she has respiratory capacity issues. And unfortunately, as safe as she's been, as safe as we all have been, It's hit her now. So you just don't know. So that's why we need to continue to cover our faces and social distance and wash our hands and keep doing those things and protect the elderly that are at most risk by this. Again, the average age of those that are dying from this are still 81 to 82 years old. Also, just the governor's going to be on shortly at 1 o'clock. So I'm going to tune into that. But I hear that there may be some more restrictions coming down the pike. So we're going to want to listen for that and see what that has to, what happens with that. I don't know if Mike saw this, the census numbers just came out, the estimated census numbers. In 2010, Massachusetts was 6.5 million people. It's projected in the 2020 census to be 6.885 million. So we're starting to get the census numbers out now too. So they are climbing here in Massachusetts. And that is the update for today, Steve.
Thank you. And that's Plymouth State Representative Matthew Muratore. He's here to answer your questions. We're going to be back in 2 weeks on January 6th. And at that time, Ken, Matt, and I will be joined by Dr. Philip Triffletti. He's an attending primary care physician at Beth Israel Deaconess. Also, Barry Potvin. He is the chair for the Plymouth Board of Health. Carolyn Rains is the director of health services for Plymouth Public Schools. And once again, Heather Cosby will be joining us with further information regarding the new legislation. Stephen Cole is the executive director, Plymouth Regional Economic Development Foundation. At this point, we've received some questions, and we're first going to go through those questions and then go back through our panel. The first question is going to go to Dr. Wilson. Dr. Wilson, with respect to the COVID transmission in the United Kingdom, what do we need to know right now, and will this impact testing or guidelines in Massachusetts, or will it affect flight restrictions? What are your thoughts as an epidemiologist?
We're still in a learning phase with regard to this new strain, but most of what I've understood is that the strain may be more infectious, but it probably does not produce more severe disease. And it appears as though the vaccine that's being administered will protect against infection by this new variant. So I think that it's very likely, first of all, that this variant has appeared already in many other parts of the world, and it's just now being studied and recognized in England. And so my sense is that while we need to be cautious, I don't think any major changes should be undertaken because, again, the vaccine is going to be effective against it, and the infection is no more severe than the other strains that are regularly circulating.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Next question for Dr. Campbell. Dr. Campbell, what criteria would the Plymouth Public Schools use in determining if learning should go remote? If you could unmute, Dr. Campbell.
9 months of Zoom, and you think I'd remember. Thank you, Steve. That's a very good question. There's really not one criteria that we look at. We look at the number of COVID cases within a particular school. Is there a school transmission? If we have any evidence of school transmission, of course, we would take action. It may be as much as little as closing down a particular classroom or a grade level, depending on the configuration or the severity of it, or an entire school. But we work hand in hand. We're constantly looking at our confirmed cases, doing all the contact tracing we possibly can, getting all the information we can from everyone involved, working with public health, working with our nurse educators, and administrative team to make sure that we reduce any likelihood of anyone who would come into contact with an individual with COVID remains in our school. So while there's not one specific formula, we would be looking at certainly if there was a transmission within a school that we would be closing and going remote.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. Next to State Representative Matthew Muratore. Representative Muratore, you did mention the governor is coming on at 1 o'clock. Our viewer asks, is it anticipated there'll be additional restrictions over the next 2 weeks in the state? What would lead to additional closures? And finally, why isn't the state website showing hospitalization numbers by hospital and region any longer? So a number of questions.
Okay, well, first of all, let me take the last one first. The state website does show hospitalizations for the regions. It doesn't show it by hospital. I'm not sure why they took that down, but that information is there if we need to get it. Regions seem to make more sense going through the Commonwealth, but we could get that if we need to. With regard to, I'm sorry, Steve, what was the first part of that question?
The first part was, is it anticipated there'll be additional restrictions over the next 2 weeks and what would lead to closures?
Yeah, so I think I'm speculating here that there may be some more restrictions coming about. The cases are still climbing. The concerns is the hospitals and the healthcare workers in the hospitals. If we start running out of beds, that's a big concern. Like I said, we are the beds remaining open. Non-ICU beds are a little less than 20% at this point in the Massachusetts, and the ICU beds in Massachusetts are at 28%. So the concern is now with Thanksgiving, we saw the big surge. Before Thanksgiving, these numbers that we're reading today were half of what they were. Now we're in the surge of Thanksgiving. Now the concern is that Christmas is coming in any day now, and those restrictions and those numbers are going to again extend higher after New Year's. So we're not out of the woods yet. The biggest concern is going to be the first part of January, the first half of January. We're going to be really having some issues here. So I think that would be the reason if the governor decides to do any more restrictions. It's good that the vaccine is coming. It's getting there, but we're still far from out of the woods with the holidays here.
Thank you, State Representative Matthew Muratore. We're going to go back through our panel for their closing thoughts. We're going to begin with our health segment participants and start with Sarah Cloud. She's the Director of Behavioral Health for Beth Israel Deaconess here in Plymouth. Sarah, what would be a takeaway today that you'd like our viewers to remember during this holiday season as we respond to the pandemic?
Great. Thank you for asking. I think the takeaway is that we've covered a lot of ground and a lot of difficult ground in this past year. And I think we can go a little further. There's a lot more work we need to do to get us through to these last final hurdles with the light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccinations and the promises of a much better year in 2021. And so I think really the highlights from the poem that Ken shared is really worth revisiting as I close today. And the highlights are: one day at a time, this is enough, live in the present and make it so beautiful that it'll be worth remembering.
Thank
so
you.
Engage in a peaceful and safe holiday traditions this year so we can welcome much better days ahead in 2021. Thank you and happy holidays.
Thank you, Sarah Cloud, Director of Behavioral Health. At this time, we're going to go to Dr. Mark Wilson. And Dr. Wilson, we're hearing a lot about vaccines, and that's encouraging. You'll be back in 2021 with more information. But what are your closing thoughts today as we close out 2020?
Well, you're right. We will have a better 2021. But I think even today's session was a refreshing good news hour. Vaccinations have begun, and for most of us, they're really around the corner. There are safe ways to celebrate the holiday season, but we need to do it differently, in a thoughtful, different manner this year. Congress has compromised, and various types of economic relief are now on the way. Even if there are increased cases, the state is carefully monitoring and responding to the situation. So I think this is, again, good news. There are still many COVID-related challenges to come, but keep in mind about how much we've already endured this year. Everything now suggests that next year will almost certainly be better and more rewarding. So my best wishes to all in 2021.
Thank you, Dr. Mark Wilson, active Professor Emeritus, University of Michigan School of Public Health. This time we go to Dr. Christopher Campbell, the Superintendent of Plymouth Public Schools. And Dr. Campbell, as we close out this week with Plymouth Public Schools, despite some of the requests from elected officials. We know that some of your children, parents, and staff may be traveling during the holidays. And what do we need to think about as we move forward to 2021?
Well, certainly, yeah, thank you, Steve. So to say that 2020 has been a difficult year, I think would be a tremendous understatement. COVID-19, this pandemic has arguably been one of the single greatest challenges ever faced. We're all just mentally, physically, and emotionally exhausted. And at the same time, however, I'm very inspired as I look back at 2020 and see great promise for 21. As I've said before, said it on this show, I've witnessed the amazing goodwill and charity of so many people in this community. I truly believe that in the hours of our greatest need, the goodness of our humanity tends to shine brightest. And this past year has been no exception in Plymouth. So while social distancing has been the term for 2020, 2020 has also provided an opportunity for our community to unite in many ways. And as I highlighted, it's highlighted how we as individuals can all contribute in a way to find solutions to this collective challenge that we have. So while there are many things in 2020 we all want to leave behind, I'm hopeful that there are other experiences that will live on. And on behalf of the Plymouth Public Schools, I just want to thank our entire staff, our students, families, our great community for the continued support and the generosity through this past year. Wish everyone a very happy and healthy and safe new year. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Dr. Christopher Campbell. He is Superintendent of Plymouth Public Schools. At this time, we return to Heather Cosby. Heather, in my professional world, the pandemic has actually been helpful to my clients, streamlining some of the filings in court, virtual accessibility, making notices available electronically rather than with snail mail. And in your world as a CPA, it has to be a little exciting to know that some of your clients, taxpayers, are going to be getting some relief going forward.
Yes, it is very exciting. I wouldn't say I've had as many positive things in my world as you, but I like that we're both in red and white Christmas, by the way, so I wanted to say that. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. The businesses were really facing some real kind of disasters about to happen. So I'm really, really happy that this law has come through. I wanted to mention just one other thing that I did forget, and I was hoping to see Amy Naples from the Chamber on here. The law allows 501c6 business organizations such as Chambers of Commerce to get PPP loans. That they weren't, some of them weren't allowed before. So that was just one other small piece that I thought would be good to share because our chamber works so hard for all these businesses, and I hope that they are able to participate. But like everybody else, this year is absolutely crazy. And, I think it's amazing what everybody's done, and it's nice to see that we're turning the corner. I know for myself and my household, we're all doing our best, and the school's been great. Everybody's been great. We've decided to keep our Christmas tree up until COVID is over. So that's what we're doing. I mean, why not? It's an alternative universe anyway, so I guess mine will include Christmas. So just try and find fun things to do with your family to keep things, light, and everybody, have a wonderful holiday season. And I'm really looking forward to this new year and getting this new law and the businesses back moving again. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather Cosby, Plymouth CPA. And she mentioned Amy Naples. Amy will be returning in 2021 due to last week's snowstorm on Thursday. She's now otherwise engaged in a makeup activity with the Director of Elder Affairs, Michelle Brady. They'll be back with us in the new year. This time we're going to go to Michael Jackman. Michael, I'm sure your office has been very busy buzzing with the new legislation that's being enacted.
Yeah, absolutely. Just trying to find all the ins and outs. I'm glad Heather mentioned the chambers. That was something I wanted to mention and make sure, because if Amy were on, I definitely would have mentioned it. She would have reminded me. But also of note, there are some provisions for restaurants. It's going to be a little bit easier, I think, for restaurants, smaller restaurants, to get the PPP. And it will also allow them to use more of the money on costs other than payroll. For perishable goods, for making physical improvements to their establishments. So we're really excited about that. Also, very important to note that part of the funding in the bill for small business will include funding for live venues, independent movie theaters, and cultural institutions. Going along with what I mentioned about tourism and economic development, those institutions, those types of organizations are really important here in Plymouth, all throughout Southeastern Massachusetts. So we are excited that there will be some funding for those types of institutions going forward, hopefully allow them to get through the next 3-6 months of the pandemic. And, we talk about the light at the end of the tunnel, and it is coming. And, when we're all back and able to meet again, it's also exciting because of that 100% meals tax rebate credit Matt will be able to pay when he takes us all out to lunch after the pandemic. So I'm excited about that. So a lot to be excited about, a lot to look forward to. We're really looking forward to, as I said, turning the page for a new year, and just another opportunity to thank you all for all the great work that everyone's doing, and wish everyone a happy holiday and a happy and safe new year.
Thank you, Michael Jackman, District Director, Congressman William Keating. We're going to jump to State Representative Matthew Muratore. I know, Matt, you want to hear the governor. What are your closing thoughts today?
Yeah, thanks. It's good to hear all the uplifting messages from everyone. And I love when Heather is so giddy, because that makes the business community very happy when she's like that. And yes, Mike, I'll be glad to take all of you out to lunch now that I know it's 100% write-off. Good to have that back again. So I think the message today is there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is hope. It's good riddance to 2020 for so many reasons. Yeah, there's a lot of good hope ahead of us in 2021, and it's going to be a great year. And I think it's going to be a great year for Plymouth too. I know Ken has been working hard with his team on Plymouth 400, and I was on a call with over 90 Plymouths throughout the world yesterday for a Rotary International event. Plymouth Rotary in UK turned 100. So we had 90 different Plymouths throughout the world. And I invited them all to the end of June. So I'm pretty confident we're going to have that event at the end of June, Ken. So because we got people coming from all over the world for this. So we are very hopeful. And just remember that, controlling COVID is good for not just our economy, but our health and for our students as well. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and look forward to seeing you all next year.
Thank you, State Representative Matthew Muratore. At this time, we're going to go to Reverend William McCoy. Bill, throughout the pandemic, it's been very helpful to have professional experts like Sarah with her social services background, and for members of our clergy, such as you, to help guide us and provide us with support as we try to deal with the challenges of the pandemic. And what should we remember today as we move forward in this holiday season?
Well, this is it's a universal undertaking. It's not clergy alone who guide. Of course, we guide each other and we depend upon each other, and that's been a beautiful thing. And I would play a little bit with the light at the end of the tunnel. While we are looking toward the end of the tunnel, I believe there's a light now that we have. We are great resources for one another, and Plymouth is a great resource and done an outstanding job, I think, of soldiering through this. My Jewish brothers and sisters in faith, I'm a Christian, but they have taught us to look back and to remember where we've been in the past. And we've soldiered through some very difficult challenges, but we'll continue to soldier through this. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but there's also a light we have now. And keeping Christmas and keeping our holidays tradition, be they new or old, is very important. And we continue to do that. And it's especially important that we do it now. Thanks for having me on, and blessings to one and all.
Thank you, Reverend William McCoy from the town of Plymouth. And at this time, we want to again take this opportunity to thank PAC TV for their generous support throughout 2020. And at our first show in the new year, we will be recognizing the members of PAC TV in the credits, along with over 90 participants who served as panelists throughout the many presentations this year that we had coming to you live from PAC TV. At this time, we're going to close, as we usually do, with a statement from Ken Tavares. He is chair of the Select Board for the town of Plymouth. Ken, what are you going to leave us with for this year? And Ken, you need to unmute.
You're getting there, Steve.
There you go.
First off, I want to thank Mark Wilson for saying that it's okay to accept baked goods. Mark, my dearest friend of over 70 years in Plymouth, delivered to my house this week some Italian specialties that were baked. That there was recipes that came from her grandmother, and I remember my grandmother making them. And I guess I would really have been tested if you said otherwise. But thank you. The go-ahead's there. Half the goods are gone, but I'm enjoying every one of them. So thank you to Ann and Bill for what they did for me this week. And thank you, Mark, for saying it was okay. One of the things that I'd like to close with is going back to the founding of this community. Plymouth is a community of courage, purpose, faith, and determination. I'm extremely proud of what has happened. There has been so much that has gone on since March, and much of it good. But also there have been some times that I think we could actually all do a little bit better. And an expression that I've been using lately is set the reset button. Nothing is perfect. We all make mistakes. And I've seen some heartache that I'd like to see disappear from this community. So if you have it within yourself, setting the reset button would certainly be helpful this holiday season, especially whether you have celebrated Hanukkah or celebrating Christmas or just enjoying a new year. Find some forgiveness in your heart and let there be peace on earth. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's Kenneth Tavares. He is chair of the Plymouth Select Board. Earlier, Michael Jackman mentioned about finding his hat. I did find mine. I did bring it with me. And as we close out this year, we should remember the words of our panel. And I'm going to particularly remind us what Reverend McCoy said when he said, let's not cancel our holiday tradition. So today, I'm not canceling one of mine, which would be music. And so we're going to close out thanking all of you for joining us. I'm Steve Triffletti, Plymouth Town Moderator, and we have a little song to end here.